I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and the folks that put this together. So Kim Sassini is a clinical nutritionist, and she helped put this together. So she really touched on the medical part. And Carolina Gulino is a non-GMO advocate, so she put together a lot of information on GMOs and what they are, so it was really interesting. And I'm talking about the holistic health part of it, kind of our mind, body, and soul connection. So I got this info came to me, and it's so interesting to learn it. And I get so confused when I go shopping, grocery shopping. Does anyone? It's just so overwhelming. And so in the last year, I feel like it's become less and less overwhelming, and that's been such a relief. So I just want to try to bring that to you, and hopefully you walk out here not like, oh no, I'm doing it wrong, but like I'm inspired and I'm energized, because I think that's how I feel, and that's what happened to me, so I just want to pass it on. So I feel like we get so much information about what to eat, what not to eat, and it's a lot of times conflicting, and it's hard. So I looked at it from like a basic science point of view, and I love looking at it this way because I feel like it simplified it for me. So I love this quote from Einstein: "Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way." This is not philosophy, this is physics. So the way I thought about it is, we're energy, we're cells. Food is energy, it's cells. And it really struck me when in the springtime I walked out and I was like, oh my God, my roses were like this in the winter, and everything just grew. And the energy of the earth is so unbelievably powerful that it made the flowers grow huge. And so I thought, well, this is how we are. We're organic. Food is organic. So it's really important for us to put something whole and organic in our body to match our frequency. So it's all about the frequency. When people say, having a good mood, it's a frequency. It's a higher, purer frequency. So it's kind of like tuning into a radio, and when you can't get the frequency, it's clogged and it's fuzzy. So a pure frequency is what whole food gives us. Chemicals and processed food is like a deadened frequency. It blocks that connection. So cells vibrate with an energy at a certain frequency. So whole live organic food vibrates at a clear frequency. We are organic living beings, just like food. So we need to be fueled by that. Chemical preservatives and additives resonate at a disrupted frequency, causing sickness, mood shifts, brain fog, depleted energy, chronic illness, disease, and more. So chemicals are not really compatible with our body in general. And I like having it just that simple. Even things like dishwashing detergents, soaps, things that are put on your body, your pores are open, and it comes into you. So that also puts chemicals into your body. So it's kind of like what also Nikola Tesla said: if you wish to understand the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration, because we all are cells and we're all energy. The other thing is tend to your body like a garden. So rather than thinking about like, how can I fix this, or what can I do with this part, kind of nurture your body and feed it like you would your garden. A little bit more explanation on chemically preserved food. So even farm-grown food that has chemicals on it, what it does is it tells your body, I need to preserve this. So if you have like a tomato or a green pepper, but it has chemical preservatives, your body says, I need to hold on to it. So your organs, as a result, are working harder to expel the food. So then what happens is your cells create inflammation around your cells and your organs, because it's saying, what's this foreign substance? What's this toxic thing? And it tries to protect your cells. So that's when inflammation starts in your body, and that's where you get arthritis, and you get illnesses like heart disease, liver disease, chronic pain, fibromyalgia. All those types of issues are because there's a foreign substance in your body, a chemical, and your body's trying to protect itself. So you could be on this diet and you're working and you're thinking you're eating vegetables and fruit, but they're processed and they have chemicals, so they're not coming out of your body. So you think about European food, a lot of times their food is without chemicals, and the French can eat sauce, and they can eat bread and they can eat all these things that are really fattening, and they're not obese because it goes through their body, because it's whole, real food. So I thought that's really interesting. And the other thing that I noticed from my doing like a live food diet, I eat a lot of, I went through like a 12-day eating salads and vegetables and really live food. And I felt like I had so much energy and no bloating and no stomach bloating because it was just pure, clean food going into my cells. So the energy was a clear frequency. The mind part, and I think this is one of my favorite quotes from Einstein, is the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And I think that speaks a lot to what's happened with the food industry getting so big. You know, it's just, it's become a business. And I think it wasn't out of bad intention that we wanted to create other ways to, because after World War II, we needed more food. The baby boom, we needed more food. So scientists said, you know, these things are working. But after time, we're starting to see that they're having harmful effects on our body. So it wasn't born out of bad intention, but I think we have to slow down now and think for ourselves about how do we feel, what makes sense. And our bodies are made of trillions and trillions of cells that divide and die and then renew. So don't stress yourself out. It's covered, but think 80-20 is a good rule to follow. So, you know, don't go home and say, we have to change my whole pantry and stress yourself out, because there's trillions of cells. It's like every 7 years you're a new person because you've all new cells. So just try to err on the side of filling your body with things that are whole and pure and clean and organic. Good nutrition is not just about eating fruits and vegetables. It's the ingredients that are key to nourishing your body. So like I said, don't deprive yourself. Just be kind, because stress isn't good either. So the other thing is advertising. So we think sometimes, why is organic food so expensive? Like, am I being duped? Is it really organic? But if you think about it, Snap, Crackle, and Pop and Tony the Tiger, and that's all advertising as well. And that's possibly duping us also. You know, it's like bright colors, happy faces. What's really inside? You know, why is the food cheaper? Is it really good for us? So rather than ask why is organic food so expensive, ask why is processed food so cheap. Maybe it's not helping us. You know, it's kind of like when you buy a cheap watch and it breaks. It doesn't have quality. So I think we've lowered our standards, and it's nobody's fault. I think it's just become that way, where our standards now, the price of food is low. So when we have real food should be the standard, we think we're being maybe ripped off. You know, so I think we just have to realize what's our investment, what's our return, and just have faith that the whole real food is should be the standard. And the other thing is, we get to choose. Like, that's the great part of it. You know, we get to choose what we buy, and that's the one thing that we have control over. What we put in our bodies, we don't have control over the disease that we get, but we have control over what we put in. Just have a clear intention about your choices. Like, when you're choosing the food, is it out of anxiety because we think our kids need it or we need it? You know, use your intuitive mind. I think it's going back to Einstein, and rather than being the servant, like kind of going along with old standards of this is how we're supposed to eat, or kids have to eat breakfast. My friend and I had a conversation where it's like, oh my gosh, we're told breakfast is the most important meal. We have to get the breakfast in. But if we're filling them with something that's not great for them, it's going to zap their energy more than if we don't feed them and feed them the right things. And it made me think of our trip to Uganda. I went with Sister Carol 3 years ago and worked there with her a little bit. And the kids had one meal a day. They ate dinner, that's all they had. That's all they could afford. They had no food. But they were so energized. They were so alive and running around and thriving on the one meal, because we've just gotten used to seeing so much food all around us and being anxious, like, this person has it, so should I have it? Or should I be feeding my kids this? So I think we just have to slow down and go back to our intuition. And also, prevention is huge. Treat the cause, not the symptom. So if we do spend more on organic up front, then we won't have to spend as much on the frequent doctor visits, allergy medicine, pain medicine, sleep medicine. When I went to China earlier this year with the school for 2 weeks, and we studied traditional Chinese medicine and went to the hospital and took some lectures by the doctors there. And there are 5 arms of Chinese medicine, and what they consider the most important is nutrition. And that's because they feel like, as a doctor, if you can empower your patient to learn how to eat right and take care of your body first, then it will prevent diseases later. Because I don't know if it's still the same now, but doctors in China got paid if their patients were well. They didn't get paid if their patients were sick. So it's a completely different society and way of thinking, and it behooves them then to have prevention. So I think that was really interesting. And the business of food, I think, is just a little, it's out of balance. I think that, again, it wasn't a bad intention that we created preservatives, but I think then it becomes a business, and it gets really extreme, and we have to kind of dial it back. And I think about eating to thrive, not just survive. And then I think that even though it is overwhelming in the stores, I think that companies are making it easier for us with the labeling. So this is a great thing to look for. The USDA Organic is very trustworthy, and the non-GMO product, and they have a great website, The Project. And I just went to Costco recently, and I hate going to Costco because I just am so distracted by all the choices, and so I usually send my husband. And
that's the height of our social life now.
Really? Yeah. I can't take it. So I end up with like a huge, way too big amount of money and cart. And so I was like, I'm going to try it this time. So I went again recently, and it was so easy because all I did was look for these. And it just cleared it out. And I was like, oh my God, this is so easy. I just am focusing on that. And I got it done in I had 6 items, and I got it done like that. And anyway, it was just, I think they're trying to make it easier. So along the lines of trying not to beat yourself up and trying not to be hard on yourself for treats, like we want our treats, we want our cookies, we want our brownies. And I think the key is just putting the better ingredients inside. Like, for example, chocolate chip cookies, you can use whole wheat flour, you can use dark chocolate chips, you can use organic eggs and butter, raw sugar instead of white sugar. So there's easy ways. Brownies, you can use the organic mix. This gluten-free Arthur brownie mix is really good. Like, they're chewy brownies. My son wanted this brownie that one of his kids, the Brookies at school, they made. So it's chocolate chip cookie, Oreos, and brownies on the top, and you bake it all together. So I was like, all right, I can do this. So I got organic chocolate chip cookie mix. I got Newman's mint Oreos, crumbled them up, and organic brownies, and it was amazing. But it was like, I just feel better knowing that that's what's going in us, and it just is comforting to me. So also almond milk, coconut or dairy milk. And one interesting thing I found out about olive oil, which is great for us, but if it's heated above 350 degrees, it gets rancid, so it becomes an inflammatory in your body. So what I usually do when I cook with either coconut or avocado oil, and then afterwards I sprinkle on the olive oil, and it has the same flavor, but it's better for you. The other thing to look at, here's another thing. My son loves hummus, and there's this one brand of hummus that I couldn't find in any of the stores I was going to that were the natural stores or Whole Foods or Nature's Corner. So I was curious, well, why is it not there? Let me look at the ingredients. All the ingredients were the same: chickpeas, olive oil, garlic. But the one preservative on the brand he liked was potassium sorbate. And I looked that up, and that's a preservative that actually affects your DNA. It's a chemical. The other hummuses that I found in the natural stores had citric acid. Citric acid is from a citric fruit. So there's just kind of be aware of stuff like that, and I put a list in the back of harmful ingredients, and just make simple switches like that. I mean, sometimes it's not simple, honestly. It is hard. Like, when you first start, it can be overwhelming, but I think you just start getting used to looking for those labels and seeing how you feel, and it becomes easier. And the other thing for salad dressings, a lot of them have high fructose corn syrup, which is, I'll talk about that later. So again, if you want to transfer over to organics and not go full-fledged because it is more expensive, here's a list that I printed out. It's the Dirty Dozen. So these guys on the left are what you should really buy organic because they have thinner skin and get the chemicals absorb into the fruit and vegetables much more easily. The Clean 15 have thicker skin and are more okay to buy as conventional and not organic. And then these are a good list. I mean, it does take a long time in the beginning to read labels, but again, if you look for the non-organic and the GMO, and the organic and non-GMO labels, that helps. But these are some things that are the more harmful. The high fructose corn syrup, I think that's in so many things. It's in crackers, it's in not just sweet things. The thing that's bad about it is it's a combination of glucose and fructose, and it's not regular sugar from fruit goes into your system and is metabolized like that. High fructose corn syrup sits in your liver and it just sits and affects your liver. So it's a much sweeter, higher content of sugar. Partially hydrogenated oil is a thicker oil that clogs up your arteries. So that's another processed type of oil that's you should avoid. And then I'm jumping down to like bleached white flour. So I read recently bleaching agents like the bromates. So white flour is bleached with bromates, chlorine, and peroxide. And the Eastern, the Eastern Union, European Union does not even allow those to be used. So it's interesting when you see other countries and what they don't allow, it makes you kind of question, well, let me look this up and let me find out why are we allowing it and why they're not. I mean, we're a generally more capitalistic society, that's part of it. So we just have to be our own governor on those things. And the other thing is TBHQ. That's in a lot of snacks like Rice Krispie Squares, Cheez-Its, things like that we got used to giving our kids. And it's made from butane, and butane is petrol. And the FDA says you can use a 0.02% and not higher than that. And so, but you think that these preservatives stay in your body, so they might have tested it for a one-shot time, but there's an accumulation that happens, and then all these new allergies that all kids are getting, ADHD and gluten allergies and food allergies, there's more and more studies that show that the food is creating that. So that's a good list to follow. So here's something that was just cute, I thought. Don't judge a book by its cover. So for food, follow the metaphor we use on ourselves about how we look. As we prescribe to methods to perfect our bodies and prolong our lives, we know regardless of how we look on the outside, it's what's on the inside that counts. We try to make our fruits and vegetables look perfect and last longer with chemical preservatives and additives like GMO. But what counts is the nutrients on the inside. So it's kind of a cool metaphor. So the last of the three, body, mind, and spirit, is the spirit. And again, like keep the frequency clear at all aspects. We are connected to everything, I believe. Each other, the earth, universal energy. It's kind of what Star Wars capitalized on. May the force be with you. So universal energy and God connects all of us, and it nourishes the earth and the food. It's kind of like a cycle of life. And I think that new life has a pure frequency. Like when your kids are born, they're so open and they're so spontaneous, and as we go through life we get jaded and things happen to us, and so we're a little bit more closed. I think that's similar with chemicals. When we start to put chemicals in our bodies, it kind of disconnects us from that universal energy because the frequency is less clear. So one thing that was also interesting, in 1970 we were blasted by electromagnetic waves 40 times a day. So we have these energy fields, layers of energy fields that protect us. So aside from our skin, we have these energy fields. And in 1970 we were blasted 40 times a day. Now we're blasted about 300,000 times a minute. So aside from the food we put in us, we have all this happening. So technology is great, and I think it connects us as well. We just have to do the best we can of slowing down and trying to use our intuitive mind and see what's best for us. And I love this one too, by Einstein. The more I study science, the more I believe in God. The other thing that I was going to say about organics is I think that if we can afford it, we should really try to keep buying it because it will help lower the price and be more affordable for all socioeconomic groups. And I like this Martin Luther King quote, "Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be." So if we buy more organics, they will become more affordable for the masses. And then here was an interesting article I found in Bloomberg News that the world may have too much food. I mean, you might say, well, that's not, how can you say that? The third world countries are starving. But I'm just going to read it. The past 40 years have seen an unprecedented increase in the number of obese adults worldwide, climbing to about 640 million from 105 million in 1975. If the current trend continues, about 1/5 of adults will be obese by 2025. The scientist said that the world also needs to focus on making more healthy foods competitive with cheap processed foods. To me, how to change the price of good things is perhaps the bigger question going forward. So that's what I'm talking about. If we can lower the price of organics by buying more, the rich world can blunt the health impacts of unhealthy weight with drugs to help control diabetes, harmful cholesterol, high blood pressure, and other health consequences. Health systems in the developing world may not be equipped to do the same. So this was interesting. My son said, I want Dunkin' Donuts. We give our kids Dunkin' Donuts. Again, it's like 80-20. If you go to the ball game and you get nostalgic over a hot dog, have your hot dog. Don't beat yourself up, but just err on the side of trying to put more and more good things in your body. So he asked for Dunkin' Donuts. I was like, no, it's got chemicals. I was like, well, maybe it doesn't. So I remembered that commercial, Time to Make the Donuts, and the guy was in the back making the donuts. I'm like, maybe they really make the donuts. I don't know. So I went to the Dunkin' Donuts. I asked them for their ingredients. They didn't have them, so I went online. And here's the ingredients for the old-fashioned cake donut. Like, you can see the list of all the things. And so then I went to, he likes croissants also, so I went to Turnstile and got a croissant. And these are the ingredients: flour, milk, water, sugar, salt, and yeast. So I put them in front of him. I said, here's the ingredients in this one. Here's the ingredients in that one. He said, well, I'm only having it this one time. And then, of course, I had to come back with another. Well, the Twinkie in the National Millennium Time Capsule lasted 3 years, and it has a shelf life of 14 years. So in your body, it's sitting there for 14 years. Like, what the? Imagine. So it's not just one time. So we're also seeing with a lot of big companies how they're going organic. I don't know if I see it that much in the stores, but I read this report, New York Times. So soda sales, which we know have gone down a lot, and we know how they have a lot of sugar, down 25%. Organic juice has dropped 45%. Packaged cereals down 25% since 2000. Fresh prepared foods up 30%, and then vegetable consumption up 10%. So it's interesting, the younger generations seem more aware, just because I think they don't have those old tapes in their heads the way we do, 42% of millennial consumers ages 20 to 37 don't trust large food companies, compared with 18% of non-millennials. So General Mills will drop all artificial colors and flavors from its cereals, but they are also recommended to drop the sugar substantially, move to 100% whole grains, and increase ingredient diversity by expanding the other grains besides corn. Nestle has invested a new $50 million frozen research and development facility. Purdue, Tyson, and Foster Farm have begun to limit the use of antibiotics in their chicken. Kraft declared it was dropping artificial dyes from its macaroni and cheese, and Hershey will begin to move away from ingredients. So just, I've read a number of studies, and this is one because I have kids and it has to deal with a child. It was interesting. This boy, his mother was a nurse, and he had persistent allergies that turned into full body tics. So they had done an MRI of his brain, were giving him over-the-counter drugs and then steroids to help, and nothing was helping. So she went to alternative methods and looked for this meridian stress assessment test that tested his system and showed that he had ethyl, methyl, dimersaryl, phenylmercury, lead, red dye 40, and other pesticides and chemicals in his system. All they did was they detoxified and rebalanced his body with a change in his diet. That's all they did. His allergies disappeared. He had also struggled in school academically, And after detox, he began to read above grade level and moved into enrichment classes. So it's interesting, it's hard, it's so hard to measure food. That's what's, like I said, there's trillions of cells in our bodies. It's not like you eat a donut and then you fall over. It's cumulative. So we we have to just be aware. And then here's another study from a girl who was a 13-year-old ice skater. So she broke her femur and had a first surgery and had put a pin in her femur. After 6 months, it hadn't healed. So they did a second surgery and put a second pin. I think 5 months later, still hadn't healed. They wanted to do a third surgery, and the mother said, well, I don't know, she's 13, she should be healing, she's young. Let me try to look for something else. So she did, again, the meridian stress assessment test, and they found that her spleen and her pancreas were impaired. So they were in dysfunction. And what it showed was she had increasing cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone, and cortisol reduces bone formation. So that's why it wasn't healing. And so what they did was they cleaned up her diet, took away refined sugars, flour, processed foods, and then gave her some herbal remedies. And after 2 months, her bone healed. So it appeared that the foods that she was eating, along with her, she had a lot of cortisol from her competitive, performance, but the combination is what was not allowing her bone to heal. Before the 1940s, the food was grown organically. So our soil, this is an interesting thing too, our soil was very different. It had a lot of the bacteria that we need, the necessary bacteria in it. So now, with a lot of the chemicals that have cleaned the soil out in terms of chemical cleaning, we don't have the same gut flora. And so that's why we need probiotics. So our gut and our brain are very much in sync. And our gut is hugely important in our whole balance of our body. So the soil is affected. So we're having to, that's why gluten allergies and a lot of these different allergies are happening. And then the other thing that's interesting is when you see these pictures, you say, wow, this is their life. So they're stressed. Cows are stressed. They're like us. They're living beings. They get stressed. So they release all these stress hormones. And then, when we eat meat, it's not dead. It's still alive. So the stress hormone gets transferred to us. So we're eating their stress hormones if they're in situations like this and not grass-fed. So that's why you look for grass-fed and animals that are in better conditions. One of the main things to think about balancing is our potassium and sodium. So potassium is in a lot of the processed foods, and what can balance it out is sodium is in a lot of the processed foods, so what can balance it out is potassium. So the foods that have potassium are avocado, bananas, potatoes, spinach, beans, citric juices, and fish. Nutrition depletion is a result of serious deficiencies of certain vitamins and minerals over long periods of time. Once our reservoirs remain low and keep reducing, the disease process begins. So keeping that potassium-sodium balance is really important. So like I said, eating an organic whole food diet and drinking plenty of water ensures us valuable nutrients. Adding more live foods keeps our enzyme storage levels high, which keeps us younger inside and out. So when I went on that live food diet, I juiced in the morning, I did smoothies for lunch, and I had salads for dinner. And I felt like I was wired, like I had so much energy, because when you juice, it goes right into your bloodstream, so that's quick, so you get nutrients right away. When you do a smoothie, it was kind of neat to have it done 3 ways. The smoothie for lunch had a little bit more fiber, so it took a little bit longer to metabolize. So that was a different process for my body. And then the salads take the longest to metabolize because there's a lot of fiber. So all of that live food, I was up till like 12 o'clock and up at 5 a.m. and had full energy, no caffeine. It was amazing. So the enzymes in our body, it's oxygen. So the more enzymes in live food, the more alive we feel. And the other balance that has to happen is omega-3 and omega-6. So omega-3s they're good and bad fats. So omega-3 is a good fat, which are avocados, nuts, olive oil, salmon. And then the omega-6s are the vegetable oils. So it's really important to have, and that's on that list too that I printed out, is clear vegetable oils. So when you're baking, instead of using just all vegetable oil, you use like walnut oil or sunflower oil, like a pure oil, or you know, not use a corn oil if it's not GMO corn, if it's non-GMO. So omega-3 fats are largely found in fish, avocado, flax oil, chia seeds, hemp, pumpkin seeds. So all those seeds like flax, chia, and hemp you can use in smoothies. You can use in, like when I make my son's peanut butter in the morning, I put the seeds in and he doesn't notice it. So it's good. So inflammation is really what causes a lot of disease. I'm sure Dr. Harrigan could tell you. And again, it's because when we eat processed food, our cells are being protected by inflammation. And that's also not letting the nutrients in. So inflammation arises to combat the chemicals, additives, and preservatives in an effort to protect our cells. We start to experience symptoms which may be subtle to start, but continue on the path to full-blown health concerns. Some symptoms start out with headaches, belly weight gain, fatigue, and chronic joint pain. If there is no change in our current lifestyle, more serious symptoms will continue, such as depression, anger issues, brain fog, digestive concerns, joint damage, heart disease, and cancer. So with inflammation, the body isn't getting the nutrients it needs. And dairy, the first step to decrease this is to pay attention to your diet. So dairy and wheat have become top allergens because of having GMOs, and there's an overproduction of wheat ever since the war and in the 50s. There's so much wheat being produced that it's more heavily processed, so the nutrients have been taken out of it. Talking about the dairy and wheat, it was interesting in China. I did a little movie on what their lifestyle was, because I wanted to see it from a holistic health point of view. One of the things that I noticed is walking in the park in the morning, everyone was moving, and it was moving as like a social activity. They were like of all ages, 40 to 90, I feel like, and some were playing hacky sack, some were playing kind of like this tennis thing, and some women were dancing, and I feel like it was the morning. They started out like in normal clothes and just moved. It wasn't like going to the gym, so that was one thing that was interesting. And then their food had very little dairy, wheat, flour, and sugar. They had no condiments. When we had dinner, there were no condiments. They didn't add sugar to their tea. They didn't add salt and pepper to their food. Sometimes I think here Chinese food has a lot of salt and MSG and oil, and it does have oil there, but the lack of dairy, wheat, processed sugar, and flour seemed to visually make difference. I didn't see, in 22 million people in the city, I didn't see one obese person, and hardly any overweight people. And they don't, when we went to the hospital, the doctor said, we don't really know a lot about diabetes because we don't really get diabetes. I was like, wow. I mean, so, and then as a fashion designer, I noticed like their clothes are more tailored. They don't dress as sloppy because they're not overweight. So it was just interesting to see those four things: dairy, wheat, which we do hear not great things about, flour and sugar, are really not heavily in their diet. And it's often disguised under different names such as glucose, high fructose corn syrup, maltose, dextrose, honey, raw sugar, and these are just a few. So the other thing that was interesting in China is that for the Coke companies, make a certain ingredient for them because they are not used to the level of sugar that we are used to. Our 20-ounce Coke has 67.5 grams of sugar, and theirs has about 10. Because it is too sweet for them because they're not used to it. Like, it's just, our food is so much sugar is put in all of our food that our taste buds, like, it's an addictive thing that happens and we get used to it. So we just have to kind of wean ourselves off. And that's why I think keeping treats in your life, like doing the brownies and everything, helps you kind of wean off processed sugar. You do the organic treats and then you don't feel like you're doing like a cold turkey. And it also helps to feed cancer cells and build a blood supply to create tumors. This was interesting. In the New York Times magazine, there was an article all about cancer, and the whole magazine, it was in the springtime, I think. There was a Dr. Warburg. He was a winner of the Nobel Prize in 1931, and he did a study on cancer and wanted to see, okay, let me find out what feeds cancer, and then if we take away the food supply, then it can kill the cancer. So he put oxygen next to it, thinking that oxygen would feed the cancer cells. It didn't. What fed the cancer cells was sugar, was glucose. And his research continued, but shortly after that, the DNA strands were discovered. So all of the research for cancer went to genetics and DNA. So now they're bringing back his findings because they're saying, wait a minute, cancer is really on the rise. Maybe let's look at what feeds it. Let's look at what he's studied. So they're looking at that again. Gatorade is really, any drinks that have the added sugar, we should just steer clear of. We can get sugar in fruit juice or fruit, like Izzy drinks or different drinks with seltzer and fruit are better than having the added sugar. And then the dyes, like that study on the child that had red dye 40 and all that, the dye is really causing a lot of the brain fog and certain allergies in us. So coconut water, it's hard because coconut water doesn't taste that great, I don't think. But you could maybe add it to a smoothie and it helps with your electrolytes. But there's more and more drinks that they're coming out with, I think, that are sports drinks, I've noticed in Whole Foods, that can take place of the Gatorade. And then again, like how the smoothies are a great source of fiber. You can put, when we did the talk at the school, we put lettuce in the smoothie and they didn't notice it, because if you use romaine or spinach, it doesn't have a flavor. So you can actually put you can put almond butter so you get your protein. You put lettuce and you get your fiber and your greens, and then you put fruit, all kinds of fruit, and it just tastes. And I put dates. Dates helps make it sweeter, and it's a great sweet. And then the last portion is done by Carolina on GMOs. So there's two types of GMOs, a pesticide producer and a herbicide resistor. So the pesticide producer alters the DNA that kills insects, and the herbicide resistor alters the DNA that kills weeds. So this is a little seed from a corn, and they manufacture the DNA and change they call it a cauliflower mosaic virus. They put a virus into the corn kernel. So there's a really good movie that explains, it's kind of fun. This guy took his family around and was discovering what GMOs were. One of the things in the film that he showed were, this was incredible. So after the Haitian earthquake, Monsanto, which is the biggest producer, I don't know if it's the only producer of GMOs, they donated 400 tons of GMO seeds to the Haitian people. The Haitian people, who are starving, probably one of the most starving nations in that hemisphere, burned every single one of the seeds because they knew, I guess inherently, instinctively, indigenous people know it's not going to be good for me. And they also know, maybe they also had the instinct that you can germinate GMO seeds, but you're required to pay the company because they have a patent on it. So you can't just you have to buy every new season because they come up with a new formula every season. So again, it's, I don't want to necessarily come down because it came out of somebody had a great invention. I want to create more food, but I think we just have to just slow down and kind of be aware and go back to our instincts. This is showing the areas of the countries of the world. In the green is where no GMOs are allowed. And in the brown, 80% of what is produced is GMO. But of certain vegetables, not 80% of everything that's produced. So 38 countries have banned GMOs and 28 have not. And USA is the biggest producer per cultivated area of the GMOs. So these are some of the foods that are made as GMO products. So it's just really important. Labeling has been in the news so that we can choose. We want to be able to choose. And some people may say it's fine. Maybe we don't have enough research. Maybe some people would say so. Because 92% of soybeans planted in the U.S. In 2008 were GMOs, 97% in Nebraska and South Dakota. Genetically modified corn, 80% of the fields in the U.S. by 2008 were genetically modified. Interesting thing, it's kind of a pun, but it's kind of odd also. So they wanted to make tomatoes more resilient, so they found a strain of salmon that were frost, resistant to frost. So they took the DNA out of the salmon and use it in the tomato, so it lasts longer. So that's, what if someone has a salmon allergy and they're eating a tomato? So it's good. That's why the labeling is really important. And then just showing the GMO corn seeds are on the left and the regular corn seeds are on the right. And this Norway is doing a cool thing. They have a vault of every seed that was ever produced of natural seeds that they're keeping, so that in case there's too many GMOs being produced, we can survive. We can go and get the seeds from their bank. It's kind of a cool thing. And here's just some snack brands that, it's just gotten getting easier and easier to find better quality ingredients in food.